Welcome back to the Hoosiers Games. We're talking about Canada soccer and U.S. soccer. Tonight we're going to do talking an overview on the U.S. women's national team's camp in Austin, Texas, down at Q2 Stadium. Last video we covered the men's camp, domestic players base camp in Phoenix, Arizona. This one is for the women's in Q2 Stadium at Austin, Texas, home of Austin FC and MLS. So, just like last video, finally was able to get this video out to you guys, and after long things kept getting in the way, but here I am. As I always said, better late than never. Here it is. And just like the USWNT video, we're going to be doing this for the women's as well. I read off the list of names that are in this camp, and I'm going to talk about who's new, as well as why they're there and why they're important, as well as what the overall goal and mission is for this U.S. women's national team roster. So, without further ado, let's just dive right into this, shall we? So, basically, quick overview. U.S. women's national team are preparing for a big year. Obviously, they got CONCACAF World Cup qualifiers coming up for 2023. New Zealand, Australia, Women's World Cup. So, USA and Canada are obviously heavily favored in that. So, we'll see what they can do. Also, you got the inaugural tournament. So, you got the CONCACAF Women's Championship as well as the Gold Cup being featured in there. So, that'll be interesting to see how they'll do there. Although the Gold Cup probably won't come out until 2024, so hey, more content to cover for me. So, but big year overall. They're trying to qualify for the World Cup. They're obviously heavily favored to do so, but at the same time, they don't have the same amount of players or the same type of players that they did with before in 2019. So, which is why I'm going to be reading off a lot of new names, and we're going to be talking about the potential of these young players that are joining them, the passing of the torch, as I kind of left it off last year during their last couple friendlies against Australia. So I'm going to read off some new names, and we're going to talk about those new names. But here we are. I'm going to start with the goalkeepers. We got Aubrey Kingsbury, by the way, which is new. Casey Murphy, which we know her, but I'm still going to talk about her and her roles and her shoes. And, of course, we have Alyssa Nair, which we know about. But Casey Murphy, of course, playing a huge role with the Australia friendlies. And she's relatively new, so I'm still going to talk about her and her potential. But Aubrey Kingsbury, of course, I'm going to have to do a lot more research on who these new players are, but these are just big opportunities for these new players to really fill some big shoes. So those are your goalkeepers. We're going to talk more about those two later. Let's go to the defenders. We have Elena Cook, which I'm not sure is new or not. Abby Dahlkemper, we know her. Tiana Davison, we know her. I believe that is that a new one? Yeah, it's Amani Dorsey. That is a new one. And we have Emily Fox. I believe she's been around. Naomi Germa, I think that is definitely a new name. Sofia Huerta, that is a new one for me, at least I had never heard of her. And we know Kelly O'Cara and Emily Sonnet. So quite a bit of new names on here that I'm going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about what potential and what roles and what shoes can they potentially fill coming up. And then we go to our midfielders. We know Lindsay Horan, new one. We have Jalen Howell, so she's new. We know Rose Lavelle. We know Christy Mewis. We know Samantha Mewis, the two Mewis sisters. Ashley Sanchez sounds like a new one. And Andy Sullivan, we all know. And then finally, we go to our forwards. We have Ashley Hatch, which we know. She scored a couple goals against Australia in their last friendlies. Mallory Pugh, we know. Margaret Perch or Mitch Perch, we know her. Trinity Rodman, which is a new one. Sophia Smith, we know. And Lynn Williams, we know. So Trinity Rodman being the new one there. But those are those are the women that are in your U.S. Women's National Team camp for this January, preparing for a big year. And then, of course, the new names that I read off were Aubrey Kingsbury, Amani Dorsey, Naomi Germa, correct me if I'm saying it wrong, Sofia Huerta, Jalen Howell, Ashley Sanchez, and Trinity Rodman are your new names I'm going to be talking about that have big feels. Now, unfortunately, I don't know as much in depth for these new names as I did for the men's, so I am going to have to do research on learning more about them, but I do know for the most part they are all young, and that's what they all have in common. Basically, in terms of what we're talking about for a big year, in terms of the keepers, Ashley Kingsbury, and even the goalkeeper Murphy that played in a few Australia games, they're going to have some big games this year. Alyssa and Nair to that extent, too. You know, they're all young and they're all going to have to really continue to step up and fill some big roles coming up this whole year, 2022, if they're going to want to lead the U.S. women's to the World Cup in Australia next year, as well as continue to be the queens of CONCACAF. So that's going to be an interesting trying story and see if they can do that, live up to the task. But we've got quite a bit of new names, right? Because remember that Carly Lloyd is retired already, and I believe Megan Rapinoe she's not officially retired, but she's probably aren't close to being on her way out. So you're probably not going to have her for long. So once again, these new names just symbolize and really highlight the passing of the torch for the U.S. women's national team. So, Aubrey Kingsbury is trying to challenge for a spot of being the U.S. women's goalkeeper. Amani Dorsey for being a defender. So was Naomi Germa. Sofia Huerta, Jalen Howe, and Ashley Sanchez all trying to be new midfielders. And, of course, Trinity Rodman trying to be a new striker. And so lots of new young faces here to try and potentially grab this for the U.S. women's national team. But the first test that's going to happen for these players are the She Believes Cup, which the teams are TBD, I believe. But once again, I would really, really like to see Canada in there. Once again, like last year, that Canada-U.S. battle was always great to see the top two teams of CONCACAF. Maybe a team like England or France. You need one of those European, England, France, Germany, Spain, any of those top European teams. So obviously you need to have at least, in terms of out of the Americas, I think Canada will be a good test for them. I'll say this as somebody's listening, although they're probably not, but Canada will be a good test if they could do that again. Always good to have a fellow rival in there. One of your top European teams like Sweden. Sweden could always be a good one. Sweden always likes to give the U.S. a challenge. Any of those top European teams. And I'll say a top Asian team, Japan, or potentially even South Korea. China if you can, potentially, but I think Japan is definitely the top or maybe even Australia or New Zealand. You can invite them back. And then I guess you can have one of your practice teams like, let's see, someone from last year was Argentina was the kind of team that everybody kind of got points off of. Maybe this year it could be, who could it be? I mean, New Zealand's good. Australia's good. I would say if you are going to pick some, I guess you can pick someone like one of the African teams, like Nigeria or even Jamaica. Probably Jamaica if you want. I guess if you want to do that again, if you want another team to get easy points off. Although in this case, in terms of the U.S. women's, you need all the challenges you can get for a big year. So I would be fine with watching them get challenged by Canada or Australia, New Zealand, Sweden, any of the top teams, Japan. So I really, really hope who's on the selection committee for this She Believes Cup really picks out some interesting teams for the U.S. women's national team. That way I want to see a challenge and really see what these young players are made of, right? Throw them into the fire right away. Sometimes that's their best test, right? Sometimes rather than easing them in and just trying to get opponents like Mexico, where even Mexico is proven not to be an easy test anymore because they're getting better. But instead of giving them like these cupcake teams, as they say, throw them right into the fire. Give them some good tests, right? They're the USA, right? So they got to try and see if they can live up and keep that title. So that would be interesting to watch and see what kind of teams we'll be seeing for that tournament. And but for that, of course, you got that. And after that, you have the CONCACAF women's competitions, including local qualifier. And obviously, the U.S. will obviously going to be under pressure to make it every year, as they always have and always hopefully should be with Canada. But upsets can happen in CONCACAF. We know that the sport is full of surprises. And once again, there's pressure on this young passing of the torch players. Can they live up to the pressure? Can they continue to take the U.S. women to the World Cup and perform well? Not just get there, but perform well, right? So that's going to be another challenge for them. So this year is going to be interesting for the U.S. women's. Looking for a passing of the torch. A lot of your senior role players are kind of gone out the door, and you have a lot of new players trying to fill big shoes and really take their position. So we'll see if they can live up to the hype. But 2022 is going to be a big test and an interesting test for this U.S. women's team, and I really, really hope they have a good training camp. And we're going to see what the first test is made about in the She Believes Cup coming up with the selected teams, which we'll find out as well. But if you like this video, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Tell all your friends about it. Also tell all your friends that the U.S. women's team is passing the torch. Will come to its first test during the She Believes Cup, as well as the CONCACAF World Cup qualifying test coming up this year.